Hey there, welcome to the sermon preview for this week. Lance, we have wrapped up our Sermon on the Mount series, and we're going into a new one. What is the next series that we're going into?
So we're going into our DNA series, is what we're calling it. It's going over the values we've established earlier this year, kind of looking through what those values are and unpacking those into a deeper level.
Right. So we've got these 5 different values, as well as identity statements as well, that are coupled with that, and some scriptures that go with each one of those. And so we're going to jump in and we're going to take one of these values and identity statements each week and unpack it and really dig deep into what does that mean for us. So the whole idea of DNA is that DNA is what says who we are, right? Like it's our genetic makeup. And so when we look at the idea of DNA for the church, we can say, okay, our church DNA is who we are, right? It's who God has created us to be. And so that's kind of what the hope is behind this series, is to take these values and these identity statements and really dig deep and say, this is who we are. This is who God has created us to be here in Shipshewana, Indiana, right? So this first week, we're going to be looking at Acts chapter 15, verses 6 through 11. And that is, the context around that is it's kind of sandwiched in the Jerusalem Council is what it's called. And it's where a bunch of leaders in the church are coming together to see, do the Gentiles that are coming to belief in Jesus, do they need to become Jews, and do they need to follow the law of Moses, right? So that's kind of the context behind it. And Peter, he stands up, and that's the passage that we're going to look at, is when Peter stands up and he gives some words and thoughts on this. And he essentially ends this part by saying, listen, like, it's about grace, right? It's about grace. So the value that we're looking at this week is, our first value is grace. Lance, what's the identity statement that's coupled with this?
We are people who receive God's grace through Jesus.
Through Jesus, yep, that's exactly right. So we're talking about this idea of grace and looking at it specifically in the context of this passage. But Lance, as you think about the idea of grace, how would you maybe define grace in your own words?
Yeah, I think it's something that, we receive, we haven't earned it. It's kind of almost a gift. And you really you don't deserve it.
Right. Undeserved favor would be another way to say it. Undeserved favor. So we have this idea of grace, and what does it mean for us to live in God's kingdom, to be a part of His family, in which we don't deserve to be there, but we are there because of the grace through Jesus that we've experienced. So we're going to dig deeper into that. So as you're preparing for this week, this Sunday, this passage, look at it, read over it, read the context around it. It's really interesting to look at that whole, really even the whole chapter 15 is a really interesting chapter. But think about this idea of, how have I experienced God's grace? And have I sought to earn God's grace by the works that I do, or have I accepted it like a gift? Because the reality is, when grace has to be earned, it's not grace anymore. So grace is something that is totally unearned, undeserved. So how have you experienced God's grace? So think about that. Really excited for this week. We're jumping into this series. It'll be 5 weeks long, so a little bit of a shorter series than what we just experienced. But I think by the end, we'll really have a good feel for, this is our DNA, this is who we are, this is who God has created us to be. So we'll see you then. Take care.